Hey everybody, welcome back. We've got an interesting speaker that was sent in, and I'm kind of excited to share some information with you guys on this one. This is a Wharfedale Linton, and it's kind of a throwback to the old school type of speaker design where we used to have those big box speakers and they were shoebox shaped and they sat on the floor, and over time we've gotten away from that. We've realized that these big wide baffles tend to localize the sound. It sounds more as if it's coming from the baffle forward because of all the surface reflections on the baffles. So speakers began to get more and more narrow and taller and slender, and we started using smaller, lighter weight drivers instead of big heavy ones because they're faster and they dissipate stored energy a lot quicker, and they don't have as much overshoot and less boominess caused by big woofers. Of course, this one's just an 8-inch woofer, so still a pretty reasonably sized woofer, pretty fast. I like the cone material that these are made from, but there were some issues. There were some issues with this, and I've seen these listed for about $1,500 a pair. They're somewhere in that price range, so you're paying some money for these. So what are you getting for your money? Well, the box has this oversized frame that sticks out on it, and the frequency response from the drivers is reflecting off of that, and it's really causing some diffraction issues. And it was bad with the tweeter and the mid. And if you put the grill on, the grill is made pretty well. There's a radius on the back side of it, or at least an angle cut, so it's not a sharp edge. And as you can see, a little smaller at the top. And with this on, it actually had a little bit better response. So I wouldn't say it fixed this issue, but it helped it a lot. So the measurements that I'm going to show you I'm going to show you with and without the grill. And when I worked on it to try to redesign something for this thing, it was with the grill on because that's the way it measured best. The box is unbraced. It's 3/4-inch material, fairly hollow. The mid is in its own little circular shaped little cardboard cutout for its airspace, and the rest of the airspace is being used by the 8-inch woofer. There's 2 ports in the rear and some very inexpensive binding posts. Also, the internal parts are quite cheesy. There's some pretty cheesy parts here. And, you see iron core inductors for everything except the tweeter circuit. There are a few poly-type caps there, but there's also electrolytic caps. There are all the resistors are the little small sandcast resistors, little 5-watt variety, all stuffed onto this little circuit board. So very budget level parts. The tweeter did have one poly cap on it, so they put a little bit of effort there where it would make the most good in the tweeter circuit. If they'd have taken little air core inductors or air core inductors in general and poly caps like this one and used that throughout the whole crossover, of course the crossover would be 3 times the size, but that would improve the performance quite a bit. But it is what it is. They're working to hit price points, and they did not spend much building this thing. Even the way the drivers are made, they're fairly inexpensive. Let's look at the on-axis frequency response. And if you look at it, you can see that it's very bass heavy, and it's bass heavy at a 1 watt 1 meter measuring on tweeter axis. It's still bass heavy. It's a little choppy in its response too. There's some choppiness all over. There's some peak there in the tweeters range up at the top that's caused by this diffraction. There is an imbalance across the speaker. The top end averages about 87 dB, and at the very bottom end it comes up to about 91. It's rated at 90 dB sensitivity. So they didn't overrate the sensitivity like a lot of companies do. That's kind of where it is, at least down low. But let's look at this measurement. This is an overlay of the first measurement. The green line is the new measurement, and that's with the grill on. So as you can see, when we put the grill on, it took some of the choppiness of the tweeter's response out, and it looked better. The impedance is fairly smooth on this thing. It does dip to 4.1 ohms down at the lower range. So keep that in mind. If you're going to purchase these, you're definitely going to need an amplifier that's stable down to 4 ohms. It's not going to be receiver friendly. The horizontal off axis, it's choppy, but it rolls off pretty smoothly. And the vertical off axis, it's also choppy, but there's no big suck outs in the response there. So in a way, they did a pretty decent job designing this thing. They just used really cheap parts. And the spectral decay looks pretty clean. So all things considering, of course, the spectral decay is not going to show you the ringing that's associated with the cabinet walls. There may be some frequencies there. I didn't do a frequency sweep to see where the thing lit up, but there's going to be certain ranges there where that cabinet may really light up. But in the spectral decay, we're just looking at the stored energy of the drivers and how fast it dissipates that stored energy. And it looked really clean. Also, the resonances that there may be on the cabinet did not show up in a impedance plot. The impedance curve looked pretty smooth, so there weren't any bad resonances there. Of course, I'm just testing it, doing a impedance test. We're not hitting it with a lot of power. So once you get this big boy to moving, that may be a whole different story. I don't know. Now, what did I do with this thing? Well, this one was tricky. I tried to get the response balanced out, and I tried some different configurations and wound up using a series network between these two drivers. And then I used a parallel network as the high-pass filter on the mid and the low-pass. The low-pass on the mid and the high-pass on the tweeter. So it is a little bit of an unusual crossover, but that's kind of what it took to make it work out. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Let's throw this one up. This is the new frequency response curve, and you can see the individual drivers. You can see the lower woofer and the mid. And if you look at it independently, you think that's not the roll-off I would want out of the mid. But when you sum it with the tweeter, it sums very well, and it has a nice balanced response. I tried a lot of stuff with this. The mid just didn't want to play up there and roll off smoothly. Didn't want to play nice at all. But I was able to make it work, and the overall now frequency response is really smooth and it's really balanced. So all of that turned out really well. Let's look too at the vertical off-axis response on this thing now, which is, again, it's moving up 4 inches at a time. This thing looked great in the vertical off-axis when I was done. I mean, it hardly changed its tonality at all. So still really balanced. Same with the horizontal off-axis. It stayed really balanced all the way across. The frequency, the spectral decay, again, really clean. It's maybe a little cleaner, but pretty close to where it was as far as stored energy of the drivers. Impedance curve still looks easy load to drive. It's a completely different impedance now with this type of networks. It's still dipping to about 4 ohms. So nothing different there. Now, parts-wise, there's quite a few parts that I had to throw at this thing to make it work, but it was about 4 parts less than the number of parts that are on the factory crossover. So I was able to cut the parts quantity down just a little bit. The parts quality went way up. And since there is quite a few parts involved, there was quite a bit there in cost. And what I figured was just using sonic caps on the tweeter circuit to get the clarity and the detail levels up past beyond just using a standard poly cap. And then we used some bypass caps on a couple of the other critical areas. There's 60 feet of wire that you're going to get to come with this, which is about what you're going to need to rewire the whole thing. There's going to be 2 sheets of no-res with this upgrade kit. 2 sheets because each one of these is going to take a full sheet of no-res to control the resonance issues, and it really needs those. And then there is one set of tube connectors, and we do have tube connectors in stock now. Yay! So hundreds of orders flying out the door now with tube connectors. Total upgrade costs $731.90. So I know it's about it's approaching half the cost of the speaker in order to fix the speaker. But when you're done with it, you're going to have a considerably better performance speaker. I mean, we did a lot with this one. And I would say this one is probably going to be a fun speaker to listen to. If there's something you want to just play and crank up, once you're through with the upgrade, this will be your speaker. The new sensitivity on this is about 92 dB all the way across. So it's not bass heavy anymore. Everything else is brought up to it and nice and balanced. And these should get after it. So if you're looking for not a speaker with the greatest imaging and soundstage layering, because we do have this to deal with, even with all of this helping it there, it's still a wide speaker. But if you get it out in the room, it may not be that bad in those areas, and it's certainly going to play loud and proud, and you should be able to crank up your old rock and roll classics or whatever you want to do on these things. Add a subwoofer to it and have at it. Be a great speaker. So I like it. Once it's through with the upgrade, I really like this one, and I would even recommend it if you are looking for that type of speaker. I don't recommend it the way it comes from the factory. I think they left way too much on the table. But if you can find a deal on these things and then implement the upgrade, you're going to be really happy with these things. And so I've got some more I'm going to shoot coming up pretty quickly, and I've got some interesting stuff coming. You're going to want to catch these new ones coming up. That's it for this little episode. Again, I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.